Hey everybody, we're waiting just a few more minutes for everybody to get settled, so I'm just sort of hanging out here. You should know that the other attendees cannot see you. So you're here completely anonymously for you guys that are joining us. It won't show the number of people that are here. If you're seeing a number of people, that's not accurate. Jenny is here. She is my co-MC, so she's making sure that things are running the way that they're supposed to. And so if you need anything, you can raise your hand and ask questions. If you have questions after the presentation, you can feel free to reach out. We'll make sure that we're sharing information with you guys if you've provided your email address with us. So that anything that you want to follow up on and get more specific information, we're glad to do that. But we're going to wait around just a couple of more minutes before we get started. All right, we're going to wait just 2 more minutes now. We're going to start just at the top of the hour. We're going to start on time today, and we will go ahead and go through this presentation. You're free to take notes during the presentation. You can also just listen. I'm somebody who does much better if I'm just listening. So we'll make sure that you get a copy of the recording so you can go back and take notes if you need to afterwards. But for me, one thing that's really helpful is to just sit and absorb the information so that I'm not worried about taking notes. But some people are active listeners that participate better if they're taking notes. So just do whatever works for you. We'll get started here in just a couple of minutes. All right, we've just hit 1 o'clock. So this is when we're going to officially begin the presentation today. And today for our seminar, we're talking about the holidays when you're considering separation and all of the emotional complexity that's involved in that. And just some helpful tips as you're navigating this world. My name is Shaunis Mercer. So if you've found your way here, you probably know who I am. You may have seen me on social media sharing information, and you probably have gone to my firm's website and gotten to know a little bit about us. So I'm at Peaceful Law. It's a firm that my husband and I started together at the beginning of this year. So I've been a family law attorney for 19 years. I practice family law and estate planning. That's all our firm does right now, exclusively doing family law and estate planning. We feel very passionately that families deserve peace no matter what stage of life that you're in your family. At every stage, we want to help to provide you and your family peace. So whether you are at the beginning stages of forming your family and you need a relationship agreement like a cohabitation agreement or a prenup, or you're considering your family structure changing and separating, we're here for you through that period of time, as well as times when you might want to talk about estate planning and make sure that you've got a good plan in place to protect your kiddos, and to protect everything that you've worked so hard to grow financially and make sure that your legacy lives on in the way that you would want for it to live on. So that's when we founded the firm. It was really important to us that we help families to have peaceful solutions for whatever they may be going through in their lives. So today, what we're going to talk about is that sort of in between time when you're not really sure what you're going to do. So the holidays are coming up, and that's a really tricky time. Whether you're starting to think about maybe wanting to separate and not sure what direction your marriage is going in, or maybe you already know in your heart that it's time to move on and to move forward in a different direction with your family than living together as husband and wife, as spouses. And you know that that's going to happen, but you're a little apprehensive about disrupting the entire holiday season by making that announcement now. Or maybe you and your spouse have already talked about this, and you guys have decided that you're no longer going to be a partner. So you're no longer going to be married to each other, but because the holidays are coming up, you're wanting to stick together through the holidays and not cause any disruptions to your family right now. Maybe you have children together and you're worried about telling them before the holidays and ruining the holidays for them. That's a real fear that a lot of parents express to me when they come to see me. Or maybe it's your extended family. Maybe you have a parent that is ill and not doing so well, or you don't want to have to face all the questions of family going through the holiday season. So you and your spouse have decided to stick it out through the holidays just to get to the other side of that. And then you're going to move forward with divorce. So, it may be that you and your spouse have talked about that there are problems in the marriage, and you're not really sure what you want to do. And so you're considering counseling, you're considering whether you should separate, and you just want to get through this holiday season. So if you fall into any of those categories, this is going to be a really good seminar for you to make sure that that you're thinking about all of the things that you need to at this time of year with what you're going through. So we're here for you no matter what phase you're in, and we want to make sure that we're giving you good information, whether you move forward or not, just so that you're able to be mindful about the way that you approach the holidays during this time. So one of the things that we think is really important is to avoid making things worse. So whatever category you fit in the situations that I've just described, we want to make sure that you don't make things worse than they already are and change things to maybe go in a direction that you weren't intending by making some common mistakes that people make. And one of those common mistakes that happens around the holidays, in all marriages, right, is a financial overreach. And so when I say a financial overreach, what I'm talking about in this particular situation is the temptation that you might have to compensate for that emotional strain that you're experiencing in the relationship by getting extravagant gifts, maybe to try to convince your spouse that you've really changed and that you want to make things work. Or maybe it's because you're worried that this is the last Christmas that you're all going to be together as a family. And so, your love language might be gift giving. And so for you, you want to make sure that your kids remember this is an amazing Christmas with these amazing gifts. You get the bike, you get, the new computer, you get all of the things. And really, when you compensate financially in that way that's outside of your budget, you can make things a lot worse, whether you stay together or whether you separate. And so the way that this can impact you if you stay together, if you decide that you're going to seek counseling, you guys are going to work to repair whatever rifts there have been in the marriage. Now you're starting with an extra disadvantage that you didn't already have. And that's this increased debt or decreased assets that you've created by this Christmas spending that you've done. So, when you're making your choices, your financial choices during the time that you're considering separation, it's important that you think about the way that this would impact you if you stay together and the way that this would impact you if you were to separate. So we've talked about how it impacts you if you stay together, because now you've got something else to talk about at therapy, right? You've got to talk through how you're going to get out of debt or how you're going to make up this depletion of your savings that's happened, right? Because you've gone out and bought all of these things. And I'm a mom, so I get it. It's really tempting to want to sort of fill your kids' stockings and make sure that they have this awesome, amazing Christmas. But in doing so, the other side of that is that you've now created a bigger problem that's going to have to be mended in the marriage, especially if there have been money problems already, or you guys don't agree entirely on how money is going to be spent. This isn't going to help that situation. And if you separate, then you've added more stuff that we've got to split, more stuff that we've got to figure out. If you guys have kids, is it going back and forth between mom and dad's house? Is it going to stay in one house and now we've got to add doubles of all of this stuff that we've just bought and added to the pile? So we've got to figure out that piece of it. And then how are we going to pay for it? Now we've got less capital that we've got to work with to figure out how we're going to take one household and turn it into two households. And money just doesn't go as far in two households as it goes in one. So now would be a really good time to really evaluate and be mindful about those choices that you're making and check in with your partner about what their wishes are for the holidays. What do they see and what do they envision? And make sure that you guys are on the same page so that you don't get yourself into a situation to where something that could have been a really amicable separation now turns into finger pointing of we were fine, but then you spent all of this money at the holidays, and so now we're not fine. And arguing about debt and arguing about whose fault it is that there's less money. So really be thoughtful this holiday season. And this is good advice for everybody, right? It's good advice for me to remember that the gifts that we give are just a really small part of the holiday season and all of the things that we can do for togetherness and to make beautiful memories together. And you should still make beautiful memories. You shouldn't let the weighing thought of separating stop you from making those wonderful memories. But just know that the financial piece of it isn't going to make anything better by just digging a hole even deeper. So the second thing that happens during the holidays, when you're considering separation, is seeking comfort outside of the marriage. So when people come to see me, if they aren't actively already having an affair, most of the time people tell me I would never do that. I would never consider stepping outside of my marriage. I just want to be done with this relationship. So you don't have to worry about me. I'm not going to cheat. Unfortunately, I've had many situations where people who said that they would never consider having an affair do. And the holidays can be a really emotional time, and you can feel really, really lonely if you're not connected with your partner anymore. And, you know, maybe they've told you that they want to separate, and so you know that you're not getting that affection from them, or maybe just the struggles over the years of not feeling heard, not feeling listened to, or maybe they've had an affair, but all of those, whatever the reason is that you're considering separating, it can be really easy during a time that we're connected with loved ones even more, and we're feeling isolated to seek out that comfort outside of the marriage. And it's really important to know that that's not going to make things better. And it can a lot of times make, again, what could have been a really amicable separation or a relationship that could be repaired through counseling and good communication with each other. It can take it past that point of no return to where now the relationship, the trust has been broken even more. And now there's finger pointing again of, but you had an affair, but you did this thing. So the scales sort of shift in that respect, and then you can't move forward in an amicable way because one person is unwilling to forgive or understand where that came from, or you can't separate amicably, or maybe one person can no longer consider reconciling because it was an escalation of an existing affair, or it was a new affair that started when there was just a small rift in the relationship. So I would encourage you to check in with yourself throughout the holiday season. If you're feeling the need to be nostalgic and reach out to an old boyfriend on Facebook that you had from high school, now is not the time to do that. Once you make decisions about the relationship and whether you are going to separate, when you actually do separate, then you can consider, with the advice of your attorney, when the appropriate time would be to reach out to the old high school boyfriend. But now is not that time. So this is a tricky subject. Again, most people say that it's not going to be an issue, but it comes up. And it comes up a lot during the holidays because that is a natural time for people to want to connect. So I would just encourage you to have that top of mind and to be actively aware that that may be a temptation that's going to come, but that it will make your life so much worse. Whether you're going to stay or whether you're going to go, this will not make it easier. So another thing that happens is just checking out completely. So it's sort of like the opposite of the affair, right? So you're in a household with everybody, you know, maybe it's Christmas morning and you just check out completely. You don't connect with your kids. You're certainly not connecting with your partner that you know that you want to separate from, but you withdraw. And so when you withdraw in that way, like what was the point in staying to begin with through the holidays if you're not making those memories, if you're not connected, if you're not operating in a way to where you're having good memories. So I would say that if that's the way that you feel, or you're worried that you would feel that way, it would be smart to go ahead and talk with an attorney about what separating looks like, and what's going to happen, if you were to go ahead and move forward with the separation, because, it's going to be hard no matter what. That first Christmas is going to be hard, once you're separated and you guys are experiencing no longer being a unit anymore. It'll be hard for the kids. I don't act like that things are perfect. When you separate, I don't act like that it's not hard, but you can do hard things and your kids can do hard things. But it's important that you don't put them through two Christmases that way. The Christmas that you're staying because you don't want to leave because you want to give them the good Christmas, then, give them the good Christmas. Don't be emotionally unavailable from your children or from your family. Don't withdraw, just because you're having a fight with your partner or you're considering leaving your partner. Make sure that you're able to be present, and spend time with the people that you care about, and that you're enjoying the holiday season as much as you can. And sort of, a continuation of that is avoid the escalating conflict, avoid the tensions. Please, if you're going to stay through the holiday season, um, don't take a situation which could have been amicable and make it not amicable by allowing fights or escalations, especially in front of your kids or in front of your in-laws or in front of your friends and families on New Year's Eve, right? Like, this does not make things better. This makes things harder and worse moving forward. Fighting in front of other people can make things harder to stay together, because now it's not just you and your spouse that are fighting and considering whether you're separating or not, but you've opened it up to the whole family. Right now, your third cousin has an opinion on whether or not you should stay with your spouse. Now, your wife's best friend, her friend that was at the New Year's Eve party, has an opinion about your relationship. And really, when you invite other people into that conflict, you make it harder for that decision to be just between you and your spouse about whether or not you're going to move forward together or whether you're going to separate. And also, when you separate, if that's the choice that you make, now you've got a whole bunch of opinions about how you should separate because other people know about the conflict. You've let other people into your business. And instead of being able to handle it on your terms, between the two of you, of we want to do this peacefully, we want to have a peaceful separation. Now you've got all of those people that say, oh no, well, I know, you need a shark, you need a bulldog. Everybody always wants animals to be their attorneys. I'm not really sure what that's about, but I prefer a human person who has a high emotional intelligence who can help me navigate a divorce. I don't need a shark or a pit bull to do that. So I would encourage you to keep that conflict, just between you and your spouse, and not invite other people into that conflict. Keep your peace through the season, and avoid letting other people have a say in what moving forward looks like for you and your spouse. So we've talked through like all the mistakes and all of the places where things can go haywire and bad over the holidays. And I'm sure that there's more, but these are the top ones that I've seen where people want to stay and then like things escalate and we're not able to stay through the holiday season because it's gotten to this point to where we can't deal with it anymore. Or we've got to get the situation back on track and get those other voices out of the room, or mend the financial damage that's been done, or deal with the emotional implications of the affair that's happened and the lack of trust that's happened in order to move forward in a peaceful way. So that gets tricky once these situations have happened. So we're going to avoid all of those over the holidays. We're going to talk to our partner if your partner knows that you're considering separating, or they've let you know that that they want to separate, and we're going to talk through um, like what the rules are going to be for the holidays. So we're going to come to an agreement and we're going to set boundaries. Because when we set boundaries, we can have generosity. Even if we're not going to stay together, we can have generosity in this relationship to enjoy the holiday season together. And we're going to respect each other's boundaries and we're going to follow the rules. Oh, so I've got a question that just came in, and I want to talk about this before we move on. The question that's come in is asking if we should keep the holidays normal for kids, or if we should start to prepare them for changes. And that's a really good question. I think it's really specific to where you are in this process. So if you're staying together for the holiday season, I most people are doing that because they want to keep things the same for kids. But this can be part of that boundary setting that I was just talking about, where you and your spouse decide that you're going to take on more primary roles during certain times. So to start exercising and playing around with what schedule is going to work best for the kids, you guys might decide that, look, we're not both going to go to the Poland holiday train this year. You're going to take the kids to Poland with your parents, and you guys are going to go enjoy that. And, I'm going to take the kids with my parents, and we're going to go do the Angus Barn Christmas. So certainly, you can make those decisions to go ahead and start trying out some separate time with the kids. This is especially helpful if one parent hasn't been very actively involved in parenting the kids, and you guys know that you're going to be moving towards a co-parenting relationship after the new year. You might want to be doing some things to get that other parent more incorporated into day-to-day parenting, and get the kids more comfortable with relying on that parent when you're not around. So this comes up. It comes up more often that there's one default parent that the kids go to for everything. And so if you and your spouse are working hard to intentionally co-parent together and to separate the right way, in a way that honors your family, you would want to start to incorporate that other parent into that day-to-day parenting over the holidays. So that was a really good question. I appreciate you for asking it. Yeah, we can move on now to talking about how do you protect yourself legally without overreacting over the holidays? So this is something that happens, and people that come to see me, a lot of people come to see me when they don't know what they want to do. They just want to get an idea for what it would look like if we separated. And so what things do I need to be doing to protect myself if we do decide to separate? And so if you're in that phase of considering separation, it's not too early to come in and have a consultation with an attorney. It's actually the perfect time. So that you don't hit any of these pitfalls, or there's a million other pitfalls that we can discuss that can take things off track and take the situation out of your control. But if you're in a situation to where you're considering separating, but you're not sure what you want to do, this would be a really good time for you to make sure that you're taking some steps to protect yourself legally without blowing things up right now if you're not sure what you want to do. And so one of those things is the holiday season's just starting. Look, we just had an election that's caused a lot of rifts in a lot of families, or exposed some differences that maybe seem a little bit bigger now than they did before. And so people are considering, whether they can move forward or not. And so this is a very emotional time. Post-election, pre-holidays, moving into the holiday season. And I would encourage you not to be impulsive with any big legal moves. So I understand and I support my clients who want to take some time and figure out what next steps look like. So right now, it might be the time for you to spend some time being introspective about what your goals are. And you should be working with your mental health counselor if you have one. So, I think that that's a really good person to lean on and talk to as you're considering whether you should separate or not, to find out more about yourself. What are your goals? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And what are the things that are triggering you right now that are causing the problems? Is this a today problem, or is this a bigger problem? Because sometimes things feel really big, but we might just want to get through the day and then see how we can address the small problems, the today problems, and then the bigger problems. The other thing is, again, starting to understand what's going on in the household. What would the financial situation look like? Do you guys just spend money, and not like have somebody that you're talking to about your finances? Do you have long-term goals? Do you have a plan? When's the last time that you talked to your financial advisor to know what the plan is? Or do you delegate that to your spouse to handle all of that? It might be a good time right here around the end of the year to start making some plans and understand what you guys have done this past year and what the future goals look like. This also gives you a good opportunity to get the financial picture that maybe you don't have insight to, so that you can see and know what the finances of the family are. So this would be a good time to start making sure that you get that information. It's also a good time to have a consultation with a financial advisor, with your therapist, with a legal professional. It can be tricky getting in this time of year, but most of us reserve some space on our calendar because we know there's going to be some folks that are going to want to be coming in for the first time. We understand that the holidays and the end of the year lead to people wanting to come in. So I do think that this is a good time of year to start to have those conversations, and start to understand what your options are at this time. So it can be a good time of year to do that. It's also a good time of year to do that because many of us have some extra time off during the holidays, and so we can schedule those appointments that maybe we've been putting off or we haven't had the time to do. We're not shuttling the kids back and forth to activities. There's more family around that can keep the kids. So if you can get an hour or two away, this might be a good time to start having some of those appointments and conversations if you haven't already done so. And so one of the other things that I want to talk about after I take a sip of water, one of the other things that I want to talk about is, how do you balance the emotional toll of staying versus just leaving? I mentioned that earlier, is really trying to balance, is this a good thing for me? Is this healthy for me personally? Is this healthy for my spouse? And is this healthy for our kids if we just grit our teeth and stick it out through the holidays? And so it's important to make sure that you're taking time for self-care and you're prioritizing that. If you are in the maintaining appearances, and that's what you guys have agreed to do, make sure that you're, again, setting those boundaries and then taking that time to take care of your spouse and encouraging your still current partner, right, to do the same, so that, again, we're keeping that conflict de-escalated. We're not making situations come up just because we're not taking good care of ourselves. And then the other piece of that is thinking about the kids and what do the kids need and what is best for your kids. Because I'll tell you, a lot of people think that the right thing to do for their kids is just to stick around through the holidays. Like, we'll just have this one great Christmas together. But think about how you're going to explain that to the kids if, you know, especially older kids, if you separate right after the holidays and they look at you and say, was it all a lie? And then they start to question everything about, what's happening and what was real and what wasn't in the relationship. So I think you've got to be prepared for those really hard questions. And if your kids have therapists that they're working with, again, I would have those conversations with the therapist to help your child to process and for you and your partner to make decisions about when that right time to separate is with the input of the kids. If the whole reason why you're doing this is for your kids, then like let's make sure that this actually is the right thing for your kids. And every family is different and every family makes different choices. But I want to make sure that you're actually achieving the thing that you think that you're achieving by gritting your teeth and sticking through it because it's a real hard thing to do. And you want to make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons and that it's gonna have, or at least has the best chance of having that impact that you think that it's gonna have. So again, I think that involving those other professionals in helping you to make those choices can be a really good way to do it. Talk with your attorney, talk with your therapist, talk with your kid's therapist. Get us all involved and let's have a conversation about when, where, and how is the best way to do this. Your attorney probably would have some insight about taxes and about how waiting until the beginning of the next year can impact you when it comes to being able to change your status for filing for taxes as soon as you want to be able to do that. So for some people this matters, for some people it doesn't. This is a very specific and individual situation, but it's important to go ahead and bring that up, that's one of the things that you're going to want to talk to your attorney about is what are the consequences of me waiting until the beginning of next year in order to separate from my spouse. So one thing I can share with you is that in North Carolina, you have to be physically separated, living separate and apart for over a year. So that's 1 year and 1 day before you can file for your absolute divorce. If you're someone who would like to file as single on your income taxes, you must have the absolute divorce to have been completed in that year that you are intending to file a single on your income taxes. So that is a very like practical implication of making the decision to stay through the holiday and an unintended consequence of sticking it out through the holidays. So this is why it's really helpful just to have that consultation and to learn a little bit more about the choice that you're making. It's your life and you should make the choice that makes the most sense for your family, but we just want to make sure that you're doing it eyes wide open and making the right choice, whether that's to stay until after the holidays or whether that is to make some other choice about what separation is going to look like. So one thing that I want to make sure that we talk about today is addressing safety concerns. So everything that I've talked about today so far is assuming that you and your spouse have conflict and that you're one or both of you are considering separating. But I am making a big assumption in everything that I've discussed so far that you don't feel unsafe in your home. Because if you have a safety concern, that changes everything. If there is a safety concern, if you are worried that you or one of your children are going to be harmed, or that potentially you struggle with issues and your spouse would be harmed, that you would harm your spouse, then we're not talking about how do we grit our teeth and get through the holiday season. We're talking about how do we create a safety plan immediately to make sure that you and your children are safe, to make sure that you are not at risk of being a victim of domestic violence. And being in a situation where you feel unsafe doesn't mean that someone has hit you. There is a first time for physical violence to occur, and we don't want anybody to have to experience physical violence. But also, it's not okay to be emotionally unsafe. It's not okay to suffer financial abuse. So if you're in an abusive situation or you have safety concerns, um, then you need to be having a conversation with an attorney, with a domestic violence advocate, to make sure that you are getting a safe with your mental health professional, to make sure that we are getting a plan in place to keep you safe and to keep those kids safe so that nothing happens to you. The holidays aren't exempt from domestic violence. Unfortunately, there's a considerable amount of violence that occurs around the holidays. And we want to make sure that you're safe no matter what. That's the most important thing. We can figure all the other stuff out. We can figure out the money. We can figure out what the rest of the arrangements are going to be, but we have to make sure that you're safe and that your children are safe. And so, the takeaway that I want for you to have from the conversation that we've had so far, is to plan for the future, but not to make rash decisions, right? We want to be safe. We want to be in a place where we're doing what's best for our family, but we also want to make sure that we have a good plan in place. And this is where creating that foundation, right, of what next steps would look like and having a clear picture of what the future looks like can make it easier to get through the holiday season because you know what the plan is. You can start thinking about what are the goals for next year. You can plan for what does 6 months from now look like, right? Like, where will you be 6 months from now when you sit down to make your New Year's goals? You can know what that plan is going to be because you can understand what the financial picture is going to look like. You can understand what likely custody schedules are going to look like. And you can understand what the timeline and logistics could potentially look like for separating. And once you understand what that future could look like, then you can make the right decisions with eyes wide open about when and how to have that conversation, or when to execute on the conversation that you've already had with your spouse so that you're protected, so that this can be peaceful, and that you can avoid a lengthy court battle, and having to fight about things that for most people, we should be able to work together to come to a solution. And really, at our firm, that's our goal. We believe that most families can separate in a way that honors that past that they had together, even when there are bad situations that lead to the separation, um, and do so in a way that is peaceful, that allows for the healthiest future for their kids, their healthiest financial picture because they're not wasting money, spending time fighting in court, emotionally healthy moving forward, so that they're not wasting time staying up at night, scared, worried about what would happen in court, about having to testify, about all of those things that weigh on people when they are in highly contentious um, custody battles, when they're in contentious financial battles in court. And what we know is that there's been all of this research that's been done. And for years, we worried so much about what happens to kids when parents divorce. And there's been so much done research wise, like first, oh, it's such a big deal. And then, oh, like maybe it's not that big of a deal. And now what we know from all of this research that's been done, when you put it all together, what the most recent studies are showing of these like meta studies where they put everything together and look at it, is it's not the divorce that causes problems for kids who grow up, right? In that situation. It's the conflict. It's about growing up in conflict. So exposing your children to the fighting, whether you're together or whether you're separated, that's the thing that can cause harm to your kids. Making a decision to provide a peaceful environment for your kids to grow up, whether that's co-parenting in two houses or whether that is a reconciled family where you are able to get back together and make the marriage work. The key to that is that your children aren't experiencing this constant fighting, this tug of war between parents. And we aim to provide families that come to us with the opportunity to move forward in that way. And we believe that that's possible for any family where that's the goal of both people, to be able to provide that. And we believe that there are many ways to get to that situation of peace. It can be as simple as sitting down at what we call a kitchen table negotiation, and you sit down and you pull out a piece of paper and the two of you talk and you come up with what the schedule's going to be, how you're going to divide the finances, what support obligations might look like moving forward, but you guys come up with that together, and then one of you comes and hires us to draft it all up. And then maybe the other person hires an attorney to review it to make sure that it is everything that you guys agreed on, to make sure that nothing got lost in translation. And then you guys sign it and you've got a separation agreement and you can move forward from there. Or maybe it's a little bit more complicated. Maybe you guys need a little bit more help to get to that solution. And so maybe you hire us to represent you and to negotiate with your spouse's attorney to come up with what the terms are. Maybe we do that in a collaborative divorce where we all sit at the table together and we come up with what the common goals are. We come up with, what questions each of us has that need to be answered in order for us to come up with what the plan is moving forward. And we do that in a more structured way. Or maybe we just negotiate back and forth. We just send a draft back and forth between the two parties. We can get to a solution that either way to make that happen if you need a little bit more help. And sometimes families need even a little bit more help than that. And we still can't get to an agreement. We still got just a few things that we've got to iron out. And so we hire a mediator to come in and to help us to get to that final solution. But in all of those alternatives that I've discussed, even when people don't exactly agree, we can still get to an amicable place. We can still get to an amicable settlement, which allows your family to move forward a whole lot cheaper than fighting it out in court would be. And in a way that makes sure that you guys control what happens, what the outcome is, that you guys have a say, that it's not just a judge making a decision for you, that you get to make that choice for your family moving forward. And we are passionate about making sure that our clients have every opportunity to have the most peaceful path forward, whatever that looks like for you. And so going into the holiday season, right? It's the season of peace, and we want that for you. Whether you're staying through this holiday season or whether you are considering separating immediately, we're glad to talk through that with you whenever you're ready for that. We've got some more questions that have come in, so I'm going to take just a minute, and I'm going to look through the questions that have come in, and I'm going to try to answer all of the questions while we've still got some time here at the end. So if you haven't put in a question, please feel free to put in that question, and I'm glad to answer that. All right, so I am going to start with a question that's come in that says, should we wait until the new year to sort out financial matters like taxes and shared accounts? So that's a really good question. Trying to decide when it's the right time divide out divide out the finances is kind of tricky sometimes. So the new year is a great opportunity to move forward and to have those accounts separated at that time. But it is not necessary to wait until the new year to do that. You guys might be having these conversations now about what that financial future is going to look like, but it's really going to depend on where you are in the process. And so that's why having that consultation with the attorney to help you to understand the finances, right? Get all of your financial information together, talk to the attorney, connect with, we have great relationships with other professionals. We really approach our cases in a holistic way where we like to connect our clients with other professionals who can help them. So many times our clients need a new financial advisor to talk to because they don't want to use the same person that they've used with their husband for the past 20 years. So it may be that we work with a financial advisor to look at what the financial picture is to help you to make some determinations about where you go from here. It could be that we need to talk to your business CPA to make some of those strategic decisions about when we should separate things and how we should separate them. So really, that's why it's important that you get that information as early as possible as we're going into the new year so that we're not waiting and playing catch up and maybe we missed something that we could have done earlier had you come to see us earlier. So it's a great question about the finances, and the answer is a typical attorney answer of it depends. Thanks for asking that. So another question that somebody asked, and this is something that people ask me a lot is, okay, what happens when the other person doesn't want to separate? So if they don't want to separate, how are we going to keep this amicable? Because they're going to be really mad when I tell them that no, this is really going to happen. And there's not, there's not a hope for reconciliation. So I think a lot of people are concerned that a case that shouldn't be that complicated, shouldn't be litigious, turns into that because the other person can't accept that they're going to separate. And I would say that, a lot of that, like sometimes things start out that way where the other person says, well, if you're going to leave me, then I'm going to make this as hard as possible. And we're not going to, I'm not going to make this easy for you. I'm going to spend every penny if that's what I have to do and make you suffer. Well, number one, like it's probably you made the right choice to separate if the person like wants to hurt you in that way when you're separating. Clearly, they're not the person that you thought they were. If they can't have you, then they want to destroy you. So good for you for separating. But number two, just because somebody doesn't want to separate doesn't mean that we can't get to an amicable settlement. In fact, like most of the time when people separate, it's one person that's wanting to separate, and the other person either feels blindsided, betrayed, a whole host of other things, and they're not quite in a space to process what that means in terms of moving forward. So we do spend a lot of time in our initial consultation, which we call our peaceful blueprint session, really talking one-on-one about personality traits of your partner, about the way that they respond to conflict, about ways that you might have this conversation with them, and to like talk about how to introduce the idea of how the divorce should go. And so sometimes the right time to do that is not in that initial conversation when you're talking about separation. Sometimes it is. Again, that's something that you'll just want to talk about with the attorney that you're consulting with, and probably also with your therapist, to help you to work through how to have that conversation. But so many times, like most attorneys are going to talk about the options that someone has. Not every attorney believes that coming to a peaceful resolution is the best way to solve things. That's true. But the good news is that a lot of attorneys do. And, most attorneys are going to discuss the different ways to get to a settlement. And so a lot of times they will be discussing with them the option for coming to an amicable settlement. One thing that you can do, though, when it is the right time to tell your partner that you're separating and that you'd like to work towards an amicable settlement, is for you to set the tone for what that's going to look like, and for you to explain to them. So we like to make sure that our clients have all of the information and all of the resources to point to their partner to learn about what options there are for amicable settlement and why they think that that's the best option for their family moving forward. So most people do come around to being amicable. Most people with kids who care about their children understand that spending all the money that they would spend on their kids in court is probably not a great option, but also where both parents are safe and where we know what likely outcomes are going to be if we go to court, that getting to a settlement and giving their kids peace and stability sooner is generally better. So most cases do settle. Even cases that seem kind of hairy and like they couldn't settle, most cases still settle. There are some cases that won't. And the cases that I say are not good cases to settle, that don't settle, are cases where one person is in active addiction and or has a substance misuse situation that is not being addressed. And so they're not in a position to where they can be amicable and negotiate because they're still in so much denial or unable to um, have those conversations, that wouldn't be appropriate for settlement. And the same thing with untreated mental health issues where they're so severe that the person is not in a place where they could actively participate in their own negotiation, and are in that space, then that's probably not a case that would be good for coming to a settlement. But most other cases do settle. That's been my experience. I've been doing this for 19 years now, and very rarely do cases need to be litigated. So another question that I see is a question about starting new holiday traditions while still honoring the past. And that's a really beautiful question. I do find that particularly that first holiday season where maybe you have already separated, it's really good for the parents to have a conversation about who is going to do those things that we've done historically with the kids, so that it's not weird and we're not like duplicating and doing the same things over again. And then the kids like hate the thing that was the good memory. So a couple that I know very well and have worked with, they choose to still do some holiday traditions together. And so they still go and do a couple of things together during the holidays, but each of them has also developed new traditions with their kids. And I think that that's a really neat thing to be able to do. So maybe there's something like way back from your family that used to do that you never incorporated into your family's traditions. And you can do that now with your kids. You can start something totally new, or maybe it's something that's like so crazy and out there that your ex-partner would have never wanted to do. Like maybe it's uh, you know, some people are like really cynical and don't like the turkey on the table. I don't know if any of you guys have ever had those where you write on the feathers for the turkey what you're thankful for, and put them in. So maybe if you've never been able to have a turkey on the table because your spouse thinks that it's cheesy, well, guess what? Now you can have your turkey on the table. And if your spouse wanted to watch, sports on Thanksgiving Day and you were just completely against it, well, guess what? Now in his holiday tradition, he can watch sports. He can watch a football game after the turkey on Thanksgiving, and that can be his new tradition with the kids if that's what he wants to do. So absolutely, I think that starting those new holiday traditions are really good, and it starts to establish for the kids that that each household is going to have its own unique things, but there's still that past that we have together. So another question that I see is about when it's appropriate to use mediation to resolve conflicts. And mediation is such a great tool. So it is something that can help a case that, I was talking about earlier, how like some cases seem like they could never settle, and they do. Sometimes that's because we bring in a really great mediator who can help both sides to be able to work together and to get to that place where they understand, okay, I can go fight about this for 2 days in court and spend $30,000 to get there, but these are what the most likely outcomes are, and we're only talking about $5,000 difference. There's somewhere where we can agree in the middle. And so I really do love mediators to help us to get to those solutions, to keep cases that have like a sticking point that's escalated for some reason, to really cut through all of that. And that's a really helpful tool if the other person's attorney maybe isn't as experienced in amicable settlements. Maybe they have a more traditional approach to their cases. Sometimes a mediator is a really good person to help to use some of those negotiation techniques and strategies that those of us who practice more amicably already have in our tool belt. So I do love mediation for that reason. And look, I'm not opposed to litigation. I understand that sometimes litigation is necessary. It's just that I've done it, right? Like I've been an attorney who's practiced in a courtroom. I've tried some of the most gnarly and just terrible family law cases that, had to be tried. And so I understand that there is a place and a need for that. But I also understand that most of the time that's not necessary. Most of the time, there's a way to come to an amicable settlement. And I'm so grateful that that people in general seem to understand and want to embrace that and be really practical about how we move forward with their divorce. So I've got time for one more question. And that question is, are we able to work in situations where can we get to an amicable settlement if the other partner is narcissistic? And that comes up really frequently. And so you heard me say earlier, talking about when and how it's appropriate to get to a settlement. And I would say that, even a case with a narcissist is still a case that can potentially we can reach a settlement. It depends again on the specifics. I have a lot of experience in cases with people who have had narcissistic partners. It's something that comes up frequently in divorce. So I do have a lot of experience in that arena. And I'm also really direct. So in our Peaceful Blueprint session, we will go through what different paths can look like moving forward, and what your different options are, and take you through all of that based on, my experience of having litigated, having negotiated, having come to all of these solutions, having been a parent coordinator. I can help you to understand what likely outcomes are, and then we can decide which path makes the most sense for you. And, I'm quick to tell people when I don't think that an amicable settlement is the right path. But most of the time it is. Okay. Are there any follow-up questions? I want to make sure that I've answered those questions. I know that there's some questions that I just didn't get the chance to get to. And so if you had one of those questions, the reason why I didn't answer it most likely is that it was too fact specific. And so I do want to make it clear that, we're having a legal information session. We're having, a practical tips session today. The seminar is for us to really talk about the issues surrounding the holidays. But if you want to have a more specific consultation with us and talk through your specific issues, we are happy to do that. For all of our attendees who have come to this seminar today, we are offering a reduced rate for the consult. Our consult fee is normally $350, and that's for an hour and a half consult. But for those who have attended today, you'll get a follow-up email that will have a link for a reduced fee consult of $175. And that's, again, for an hour and a half of time. We take as much time as it takes. Usually it takes about an hour, but I always buffer an hour and a half just so we've got plenty of time to talk through whatever issues you may have, and just to make sure that you feel like we've got all of the time that you need to talk through what your path might look like moving forward. So I am so grateful for all of you coming today, and I am, so happy that you understand the importance and the value of making sure that you go into this holiday season where you're considering separation, and you recognize that that could be a stumbling block for enjoying your season. So I encourage you not to let that happen. I encourage you to prioritize your well-being and the well-being of your loved ones, and you make thoughtful decisions so that you can navigate through this challenging time with grace and clarity, and that you're setting yourself up for just the most bright and beautiful new year. And I wish you all of the happiness that you can possibly have in the new year. And we are here to help you whenever you're ready to have that conversation. Again, we'll send you that link. The consults that are a result of coming to the webinar, we can honor that reduced fee consult price for the next 2 weeks. So please feel free to schedule anytime that's convenient. If you have any trouble or you're looking for some availability that's maybe not showing up on the auto booking link, you can give us a call and we'd be glad to work with you. We're always glad to set some after hours time aside to talk with you as well. So I hope that you have a great weekend, and I hope that you get out and enjoy some of the beautiful fall weather that we're having here too. Thanks. Bye.